Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the whimsical and perplexing Comic Book Vault. It's time for new acquisitions, and this week I've got quite a few things for you as usual. A bunch of DC, a little bit of Marvel, and some indie stuff. I want to say thanks as always to Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas for helping me out with the show, and if you're ever in the Kansas City area, be sure and check out Elite. We just did Free Comic Book Day with them this last weekend and shot a few things. Our first film shoot for Midwest in Panels, the documentary we're making over the summer about comic book stores all across the Midwest, and I will be doing a special Free Comic Book Day video reviewing the few books I picked up. I only picked up 4 or 5 things, so that'll be a short video, but I didn't want to include that with this stuff because I'm a little bit late with new acquisitions again, and I want to go ahead and get this stuff out. So I'm going to do an extra video for that here in the next couple of days. But anyway, I want to say thanks to Elite for letting us do that and for helping us out with this and the movie and all the great things they do over there. Also, at the end of the show, as always, we're going to have Superhero Enthusiast, who's going to tell us about some books that I didn't happen to read. And I don't know, not a huge important week. This is kind of a standard week in comics. I've read lots of good stuff, but nothing like earth-shatteringly important or anything. Let's go ahead and jump right into it and see what fun eclectic assortment of things Captain Logan picked up this week. First, let's take a look at some DC stuff, and we're going to look at Batman 66, number 10, the first and only time I have ever seen Batman and Robin in a Bat snowmobile. This was a really, really fun story, and as always, there were 2 different stories in this. In the back of this, there's a Batgirl story where she goes up against Cleopatra, who is this girl who has been led to believe by King Tut that she is the real Cleopatra, and she has kind of the same King Tut thing. There's also some nice bits of continuity there, building up from a previous King Tut story, which I really enjoyed. But the reason I picked this one up, of course, is the Mr. Freeze story. It's absurd and preposterous, but all kinds of fun. Basically what happens is Mr. Freeze gives everybody in the city during a huge massive heat wave, and I don't know what it is with heat wave stories in 66, but it seems like there's more than one of them, if memory serves. And Mr. Freeze gives everyone in the guise of an ice cream truck man, naturally, a personal air conditioner. And of course, we're talking mid 60s. This would have been a big frickin' deal. Having air conditioning at all was still a pretty new and exciting thing for a lot of people in the mid 60s. And so, so you've got personal air conditioners. Mr. Freeze's whole plan is to sync up all of these air conditioners and with the signal beam that he sends everywhere in order to cause a huge ice age throughout Gotham City, and that's what he manages to do. And so Batman and Robin have to put on their thermal D-long underwear, and they have to put on their ice fighting gear and go up against Mr. Freeze. One thing I really liked with this was Parker brings in, I don't know if it was his idea or if it was if it was David Williams who's drawing this, but they bring, and I don't know why they haven't done this in any of the issues before this. I don't think we've really seen it. They bring back the spinny transition Batman or Bat symbol from the 60s show, and sometimes in order to show time passing, they'll use that in this. And I'm like, where has that been this whole time? Anyway, once again, this is a really fun issue. This series has been kicking it over the top every time. So much fun. Next up, briefly, I'm going to talk about Batman Eternal number 4. This is by, of course, a plethora of different people planning out this big 60-issue weekly event to get as much money out of Batman fans' pockets as humanly possible. This is by Scott Snyder and James Tynion IV for story. John Layman is writing the script, and we've got pencils by Dustin Nguyen. I enjoyed this. I have some questions, some trepidation about some of the character things and some of I'm reserved about some things. I don't know if I like how slow the story is moving. It being a 60-issue thing and it's every single week, I feel like we can take our time a little bit more, but I still don't know if there's quite enough story being told right now in each issue. And I gotta say, I didn't feel that way as much until I talked to Steve Baxi and Super Enthusiast the other day. We reviewed this book together on a podcast, and they were a lot more down on it than I was, and they had a lot of really good points. You can go over there and listen to our review, so I'm not gonna say a ton about this this one because I have talked about it already over there, and they made a lot of really good points. I think I still am liking this book a little bit more than those guys are so far. They were hung up on Jim Gordon seeming to just like stand here and take it with how he's being thrown in prison. He's being thrown into Blackgate because he seems to have shot an unarmed man and killed a whole bunch of people in a train station because he hit a power box that derailed the train. But we're told that shouldn't have actually done that. So Jim Gordon is kind of just letting himself be put to pasture. He's not really fighting it, and Alex and Steve didn't really like that. I'm kind of okay with it right now, depending on where it goes, just because I feel like Jim's just not sure what happened, and he seems to be kind of in a place right now where he's kind of insecure and unsure of himself, and he seems like maybe he's been that way for a while. I don't know. Maybe what we needed with this was something before this, where Jim was starting to really question his convictions, question his ability, question whether or not he should even still get to be the commissioner. It just seems like he's burnt out and he's unsure if he's right for the job now. And maybe if we'd had that built up before, and he was just in this really unsure of himself, kind of almost in a dangerous sort of way, where that's he could be a liability, acting that way. Before we got to that, all of that could have led up to more people even buying into the fact that he shot that person, where people would be like, well, Gordon has seemed kind of mentally unstable lately, and I don't know, like, it almost seems like this needed to be built out of some sort of a tragedy or something. But then with Batman, he's out of character in this because he's suddenly acting like himself, and maybe was more out of character from what I'm used to seeing with Batman before this. I mean, we got to keep in mind that this is the Scott Steiner Batman, so we do have something to compare it to. We do have something to reference. It's not like this is just yet another characterization of this character. And so, he seemed to be really wigging out before this about Carmine Falcone, and then you get into this, like almost like he was scared of him or something. You get into this, and then it's just business as usual going up against Carmine Falcone. Art-wise, this is Dustin Nguyen, and I always love Dustin Nguyen. I think his stuff is just beautiful, and this is the kind of Batman that I like to read. So I really liked the art in this, and I'm also really interested in the stuff with Stephanie Brown, and there is a revelation about her mother that I thought was fascinating. So anyway, I'm still really enjoying this book, but I do think that there's a little bit of wire crossing going on with just the sheer number of creators on this and people whose hands are in this pie, and I think that that's hurting the consistency of the storytelling a little bit, and it's making some of the characterization a little bit confusing. Alright, next up, more from DC. You think I got some more Bat stuff? Of course I got some more Bat stuff. Here comes the Bat stuff. Here is the Batgirl Annual for this year, number 2. This is by Gail Simone with some just rockin' artwork from Robert Gill, who I don't immediately recognize. I should look him up. I'm not sure who that is, but I really enjoy the art in this. It's nicely detailed. It's wonderfully atmospheric. There's a lot of really cool nighttime stuff, and he does some really cool things with plants. So this is a Poison Ivy story. It's an oversized book. This is a $5 issue, and I think it's worth every penny. I really liked this. This is a story that's kind of trying to humanize Poison Ivy by showing what can be wrong with people, and so it's really interesting. It humanizes her by showing her why she doesn't want to be human in the first place. I think that's a really interesting contrast in way to go, and I'm kind of surprised it works. So they find, she and Batgirl find these scientists that are doing horrible genetic experiments on people, just unspeakable things, and using plants in their research. And so there's a whole lot of environmental stuff, like there always is with Poison Ivy stories. And so at first, Poison Ivy is kind of involved in all of this because of the environmental factors and implications, and eventually eventually she ends up hating what's being done to the people involved, and to the subjects that are being experimented on against their will. And so it's kind of interesting. It becomes this. She's almost a humanitarian at the same time as she's talking about how much she hates humans and why she doesn't want to be human. This issue goes over a long period of time, and 3 months keep passing in between events to show the change of season. And there's always these cool panels with the bat symbol and plants all over it, and showing the different seasons. So there's one that's fall, and there's one that's winter, etc. And we keep going through these seasons in order to show that Poison Ivy has this kind of condition that's making her change almost her whole personality every season, and she keeps changing along with the season, which is used to good effect. And you know, I keep feeling for Barbara in this. I feel like I understand why she wants to help Poison Ivy, and why she wants to believe that there is potential good in Poison Ivy. But she also doesn't give her an inch, and she's it's this kind of really uneasy relationship between them. They keep having to team up, but she doesn't trust her, and she can't trust her, and she can tell that she's motivated entirely by her obsession with the environment, and doesn't actually care anything about people. But then over time she kind of starts to. And so anyway, their dynamic is really good, and they have a good chemistry, and I think this is a really good single issue. If you want a good one and done story, and you like Poison Ivy, definitely pick this one up. It's also very consistent with the Poison Ivy one-shot they did during Villains Month, and if you read that, you definitely want to read this, because it goes back to her origin a little bit, and connects that up with these events, and that informs her choices in this a lot. But yeah, I thought that was a really good issue. Next up, we got Scribblenauts Unmasked, number 4. This is by Josh Elder with art by Adam Archer. And if you haven't heard me talk about this book before, this is, of course, based on the DC Scribblenauts video game. And it's an all-ages book. It's great for kids, great for adults. It's a really, really talky book, and there's a whole lot of words in it. So if you want something that's a whole bunch of bang for your $2.99, if you don't like flipping through a comic book and it only takes you 5 or 10 minutes to get through, this is a good book for you, because it takes forever to get through these. But they're super entertaining all the way through. It's just, Elder is wordy in his dialogue, and that's probably not just his writing style, because the game is like that, because it's such a text-based game. And so he's trying to translate the style, and he's trying to translate the style of that game to this comic book, and so that's the way it's written. It feels very authentic in that way, and so and also there's just so many characters. They each have their own voice. They each have to have a lot of moments, and a lot of one-liners and things. So that's this book. We've got kind of two paralleling subplots running along each other this issue, where Psycho Pirate has kind of teamed up with Sinestro and the Yellow Lanterns and the Red Lanterns, and is trying to fight off the Justice League and Maxwell and Lily. And so Maxwell's in one place, Lily's in another place. Lily, this is the coolest part for me, is in this kind of dreamscape place that Psycho Pirate has built with Batman, and they're kind of having to face some, I don't know if it's really Batman's greatest fear, but they're having to face the biggest scary difficulty with his lifestyle choice, which is he's fighting a war on crime that he's never going to win. And I really like, and there's a lot of like really kind of cool looking surreal stuff there, and there's a whole bunch of different Batman and stuff, and I like that this book, being, again, an all-ages book, kind of a kid thing, deals with the ideas of these characters, and everybody feels like who they are in the DC universe. It also doesn't feel 252, like all the costumes are 52, and this is something I liked about the video game too. Like it's 52 costumes. It's more or less 52 characterizations, but then everybody is in this universe, even people who haven't really been in 52 very much or haven't been developed much there, and so it feels like the authentic pre-52 DC universe for the most part, but in this kind of cute style. And the fun juxtaposition is that you also, especially in this issue, get stuff like, I forget which villain it is, maybe it's Atrocitus, somebody like talking about wanting to rip somebody's head off, and you have talk about the river of blood, and like they don't shy away from that stuff. It's not a graphic book, it's not something that would like scare kids or anything, but it's kind of fun in my mind, as an adult at least, reading this, to get to see it in this style, and it be this kind of like second, third grade looking kind of imagination exercise. I feel like you could see kids playing the Scribblenauts game like in a school library or something, to try to expand their vocabularies and their imaginations, and then you have all of the adult sort of DC stuff also thrown in the mix. So yeah, it remains a really fun book, and I highly recommend it. Moving right along, it's Silver Surfer #2. This is one of my new favorite books. This is by Dan Slott with art by Michael Allred, and this remains really fun. We've got this great kind of pseudo Kirby aesthetic. It's a really quirky book. It's a really fun, cosmic, out there kind of thing with this great sense of wonder and sense of exploration and this love of adventure. And that's the thing I'm really picking up on and loving about this book. And we're starting to finally build the relationship between Silver Surfer and this girl in the polka dot dress who has been brought in as leverage for Silver Surfer to protect this crazy world. And he doesn't understand why she's been brought in, and that's finally revealed in this issue, and I won't give away what that is, but basically the way that they choose their savior is they pick a savior that is like super powerful, but also that has some major loved one that they would put themselves in the line for, and they say that your loved one will be spared as long as you can save us. And so they pick this girl, and Silver Surfer's never met her before. And here we find out why that is. And it's kind of a Disney-ish sort of whimsical thing, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about it. It's hard for me not to, at first glance, go, that sounds a little corny to me. But in the context of this topsy-turvy sort of book, I think it's likely to work as we go along. She continues to be a really fun, kind of Doctor Who companion-esque character, and this is this girl who spent her whole life in one town and never really understood why anybody would want to leave it, because it's just such a wonderful place, and now she is having to deal with being in not just another city, or another town, but out in the middle of the cosmos, out in space, and she's starting to maybe develop a little bit of an appreciation for wonders unknown, and I'm really digging all that. One thing that I really question with this issue, though, is she gets thrown into this menagerie, and all the alien stuff is really fun, but she's thrown in this menagerie, and the way she breaks everybody out in like 5 minutes after she gets thrown in, I thought was pretty darn easy and pretty convenient. And it seemed like these people have been here these aliens have been in this menagerie for a very long time, and somebody brings this girl a food that's acidic enough that she's able to make it eat through the walls and break everybody out, and I'm like, I just don't think that they would be dumb enough to have that there, and it does seem convenient that just because she's this intuitive smart human being that gets thrown in. It's a little Earth-centric in that way. Nobody else has been able to break out, but, this Earth girl is there for 5 minutes and she finds a way. So anyway, a little bit of some of that Dan Slott plot convenience stuff that I've complained about a little bit in Spider-Man, but I'm loving the characterization and I'm loving the plot overall, and still highly, highly recommending this book. Next up, this is a fascinating one. This is a What If Age of Ultron number 5 by Joe Keatinge, and art by several people: Ming Doyle, Ramon Villadobos, and Raphael Inco, and Neil Edwards. And the reason that it's so many different artists is because everybody, as far as I can tell, from the first 4, have come back to draw this one and to draw all the respective universes. Oh, I didn't expect that this was going anywhere. I thought these were all one-shots, and I'm sure, like a lot of other people, I was reading these going, okay, these are pretty good what-ifs, but what does this have to do with Ultron? And I kind of thought that the theme was just, okay, Age of Ultron was sort of what would happen. I mean, honestly, Age of Ultron is almost a what if in and of itself, right? Because there is a alternate future that happens that gets fixed at the end of it, and so we get to sort of see what the world without Hank Pym would be like. And I thought this was just taking that idea in different directions and saying, okay, it's not going to have anything to do with Ultron. We're just going to kill off other superheroes and then try to kind of predict what the future would look like without them. But here it brings it all back to Ultron, and it takes the Ultrons from the dimension where the Ultrons have taken over completely from the first issue, and it has them looking to create new Ultrons. It's sort of like more Marvel Zombies, where there's like nobody left to take over, and so they're going to alternate to other dimensions to find more people. This just occurred to me. It is exactly the same plot as Marvel Zombies, and so what they do is they go to different universes that don't have Ultron in them, and the whole thing that I was sort of wondering about with issues 2 through 4 is exactly what this whole thing ends up being about. These universes don't have Ultron, and they need universes without Ultron and without Hank Pym having created Ultron, so that there's so that A, there's plenty of people to go get and turn into Ultrons, and B, so assimilate, if you will, and B, so that they won't have any opposition really from Hank Pym and stuff. So basically, this is a really kind of it's not as depressing as the first issue, but it's still about that world and about that same stuff, so it's a little bit depressing. But then there's kind of a ray of hope, sort of optimistic message thing at the end of this, which kind of tries to sort of sum up the whole idea of the big sci-fi what-if statement, and I really dug that. Boy, at the beginning of this, I didn't understand it, and I complained that it wasn't like so many other pseudo-recent, because I say pseudo-recent because we haven't had a lot of recent what-if stuff, that like a lot of more recent what-if, that first issue wasn't really doing what what-if used to do. It was kind of just telling a random story outside of 616, and then that's not what it's doing at all, and you get to the end of it, and it's taken it all the way back to classic what-if and what the whole point of these were and why it's fun. And I now kind of wish Joe Keatinge would just write a monthly what-if book, because I think he's great at it. And I was also kind of wondering why Keatinge was writing each of these, and it turns out there was a direction. It turns out this really was a real mini-series and not just a bunch of one-shots. Ultimately, kind of impressed with this. I'm thinking about sitting down and reading it all in one sitting, maybe doing eventually a vault on it, because I actually, at the end of the day, really dug that. And like I said, Keatinge did a really good job of creating a different sort of tone for each of these, a different flavor. He made them about different things, and then at the end was able to kind of pull the whole thing together as one cohesive piece. I'm impressed. Somebody give Joe Keatinge a regular what-if book. I'm sure that didn't sell super well. I wish it would somehow or rather do gangbusters. And I also got to the end of it and sort of wondered if I didn't like the premise for this even better than I did for Age of Ultron. Like, I almost wonder if this couldn't have been, premise-wise, Age of Ultron, you know, a bunch of Ultrons from a dimension where Hank Pym accidentally created an Ultron that took over everything, come over into a bunch of other universes, including our own, and try to take over. That would have been that could have been neat. I'm not saying that I didn't like what they did, but it would have been nice if it had been more Hank Pym centered. And I always said that because once you got to the Hank Pym stuff in Age of Ultron, that's when it got really good. Anyway, wow. That was really great. And now we're back to All New X-Men. This is All New X-Men number 26, written by who else but Brian Michael Bendis, with art by the fantastic Stuart Immonen. And this is another very dialogue-driven issue. It's Bendis. It's mostly, at least for the first half or so, one big long conversation between the present-day Scott Summers and Jean Grey, and it's kind of covering the aftermath of the trial of Jean Grey and what she dealt with in space and all of that. I really liked seeing them together and finally getting a big conversation. I felt like Bendis really gave that the space that it needed, and yeah, still some decompressed storytelling, but I was more engaged with that conversation than I have been some others that I've kind of felt the need to take this long. This is something that we've been kind of anticipating, and I think, you know, finally seeing them in a room together talking, because that hasn't really happened, and I think that Bendis kind of did a good job of building in this issue this feeling of this needed to finally happen, and we need to sit down and take our time with those characters and discussing everything that's happened, and dealing with the fact that the younger Scott went off into space with his dad, and dealing with Jean Grey's newfound powers, and dealing with the fact that she's so different from the other Jean Grey, and most importantly, dealing with the possibility of Jean Grey and Scott Summers ever getting together again. The way it's handled is maybe kind of the way you would expect, but it's quite a moment, and I really like what Scott is doing here. I really like what Bendis is doing with Scott. I like how mature he is with the situation. I like how fair and patient he is with Jean Grey, and ultimately the whole thing is sort of sad, really. Again, as I've been saying with the X-Men books lately, I'm glad that finally we're starting to deal with Beast, and Scott is really worked up about what Beast did in bringing the original X-Men back into the present, and that's all coming to a head. It seems like here pretty quickly. There's a great confrontation with Kitty Pryde and Scott Summers, and also with Angel of all people, that I quite enjoyed. And there's some X-23 stuff that's kind of fun. There's this whole joke about people not even remembering her name and who she is. That was kind of amusing. I gotta say though, I'm just not as enthralled with this as I was at the beginning. I feel like it's really slowed to a crawl. And this is, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm of two minds about it, because I mean, like I said, this issue, I think we really needed that space, and with those two characters talking. So like in the individual issues, I'll read them and go, okay, I get why this needed to happen, and I'm kind of enjoying it, but I'm not like really sucked into it like I was at the beginning, and I'm kind of more interested in Uncanny right now than I am in All New, but I'm sure pretty soon those two books will come together again in a big way. I guess I just can't tell where this is all going right now. And I don't mean in the sort of way of, oh man, I'm so excited, I can't tell where it's going. I mean in like, it feels right now like there's not a thrusting forward momentum for this. I feel like Bendis could stretch this to 100 issues if he wanted to. Like I'm not seeing end to it in sight. And I feel like the original X-Men are starting to wear out their welcome a little bit. But maybe part of the problem there too is that we're getting 2 books a month, and so it feels like I've been reading this for like 3 years. And maybe that's the whole deal, is that Bendis wants to do, maybe he wants this to be the status quo for a couple of years, and so it's going to be a whole bunch of issues. So I mean, I don't want to judge the whole thing prematurely before I see where it all goes and how it ends. And at the end of the day, I might be glad that he took his time and gave us so much character development for all of these different characters. So like I said, I'm of 2 minds about it. But right now, I kind of would like to get more of a sense of forward-moving momentum and direction. Next up, Origin 2, number 5. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this. This is the end of Origin 2, and I was a little bit down on this at the beginning, and I'm still not in love with it, but the first couple issues, I was like, I'm not sure why or how this is more of Wolverine's origin, and it isn't. I really like that Kieran Gillen takes the origin title and doesn't really telegraph too much that it's not about Wolverine's origin. It's still pre-Weapon X, so in that way it's maybe a little bit more origin for Wolverine, but it's more origin aftermath for Wolverine. It's not his origin story. It's Sabretooth's. And you really kind of get that sense at the end of this, finally. Oh, this has been about Sabretooth. Now, I like that it's still Wolverine-centered. It's not a Sabretooth story in that he's really our protagonist. The character arc here is Wolverine's, and the emotional crux of it, what Wolverine has to go to, the kind of tragic pathos, that's Wolverine's. But he is directly responsible for the thing that kind of moves Victor Creed from Creed to Sabretooth. And it's all in how he handles the death of his girlfriend from last issue, who is not as dead as we thought she was. We find out at the beginning of this issue. I don't feel like I'm giving too much away. We know that in the first couple pages. And anyway, Logan kind of shows his true colors to her, and that he's way more animal than he is man. Now, she has this weird line where she says that the problem isn't the animal, it's the man, which I don't really exactly know what that means, because it seems to me like that's a really kind of pseudo-poetic, nonsensical way of saying there's not enough there's not enough humanity in you, Wolverine. You're all animal. You just go rip into whatever it is you want to rip into. And or maybe what she's saying is that he's just a bad man, you know, that there was a animal that there was a component of, there's an animal that needs to be saved. There's this there's this victim animal in Wolverine, but then once you tear that away, you get a bad human being. Maybe that's what she's saying. But anyway, so all of that is kind of interesting, and I don't know, I kind of want to sit down and read this all together and see if I like it a little bit more. But I did really like the turn at the end where I discovered that, oh, it's not really about more Wolverine origin, and also the way things go with Wolverine and this girl that he's with is not where I thought it would go. Not the least of which reason being that I thought she was dead. But you get to the end of it and you think it's going to go one way, and it kind of doesn't do that. I did feel like she was suddenly written differently than she was last issue, and again, I'd have to read it together to find out. I felt like she seemed like a very different character all of a sudden, but that might be a guttural reaction that I wouldn't have if I read it all together. So anyway, I'm lukewarm on Origin 2, but ultimately, I don't feel like it was as pointless as I thought it was. Alright, jumping over to some other presses now, we've got Serenity from Dark Horse. This is Serenity Leaves on the Wind, number 4, by Zach Whedon and Jorge Yante, and I'm still really loving this. So we've got the guy, the bad guy from Serenity, helping Mal out on the ship now. And it's a little weird just having him around. And I wouldn't have thought that prior to the series that we would see him show up so quickly again. Given the way he's left off in Serenity, where Mal basically says, "If I see you again, I'll kill you," and I mean it's handled well here, and it's believable that doesn't actually happen, but I would never have thought that Zack Whedon would have chosen to bring him back so quickly. So anyway, he of course is kind of rogue now, and is helping out Mal because his whole belief system was destroyed by what happened in Serenity. And yet, he is nothing like trustworthy, and all the way through this, I keep finding myself waiting for him to double-cross Mal. It hasn't happened yet, but obviously, nobody on the ship trusts him, and I find myself I feeling like he's got to be duplicitous. I'm going to be very surprised if he remains loyal to Mal at all. And so they're trying to go and save Zoe, who has been thrown into a really vicious prisoner camp, where there's like this big desert, and you can leave if you want to, but you'll never survive, and everybody is just kind of beating the crap out of each other, and it's chaotic and vicious and horrible. Anyway, all the characterization remains really strong. Everybody's getting enough stuff to do in the overall supporting cast, and you get to the end, and everything that's been building up with regards to River and her background and the experiments that were done on her pays off in a really big way. So this is a really solid issue. It's mostly plot stuff and mostly more set up for things to come, but really solid. Next up, X-Files number 11 from IDW. This is by Joe Harris with art by Matthew Dow Smith. This is the first part of a multi-parter, and it is a really different setting for X-Files, and a really kind of different flavor, and I'm enjoying it. It's Mulder and Scully having to go to Arabia in order to investigate a crime, and it's supposed to be an un-X-Files related sort of thing, but of course, it being X-Files, it very quickly turns into one, and that's something that I always think is kind of silly sometimes with X-Files, where even when they're not investigating an X-File, it's still always Mulder and Scully who end up finding the weird, crazy stuff, and it seems like nobody else ever does. And then with this one, the big reveal at the end. It tells us that all of this is actually related to presumably the big mythology stuff in X-Files. I didn't expect this to turn into a mythology story so quickly, and that makes me hope that whoever's idea it was to get them to go to Arabia set them up to go there, because otherwise that would be incredibly ridiculously contrived, and I don't. I trust Harris more than that. I really doubt that that's what's going on. But anyway, I really enjoyed the politics and the social stigmas that were dealt with Arabia, and how like a Scully has to wear a towel on her head, and how nobody wants to tell them anything in the local government, and it's like pulling teeth to figure out anything, and there's a lot of things being hidden from them and really hush hush. Nobody wants them there, and there's a lot of stuff about the lack of freedom in those kinds of countries, and sexism, and I thought it was all really realistic, and I like the way that Mulder keeps undercutting things with his really dry wit. All right, next up, Ghostbusters, number 15 from IDW. This is by Eric Burnham with art by Dan Schoening, and here we are finally seeing the return of Louis Tully from the original Ghostbusters movies, and this is very quickly turning into kind of a retread of movie stuff, and it knows it's that. I'm not complaining that they're going back to all of that mythology, but this is kind of a big giant sequel to the whole Gozer thing, and we're finding that Dana Barrett and Louis Tully are being brought back together because they were the gatekeeper and the keymaster. respectively. And so that's kind of the big crux of this is these demons trying to get them back together in order to embody maybe the same demons, maybe other demons. You'll have to read the issue. And I really like Burnham's voice for Lewis. It's just like Rick Moranis played him in the movie. It's the kind of thing that doesn't translate as well to comic book form. It's just not as funny without the delivery, because you need somebody talking really fast and with that really kind of droll and antisocial kind of voice. And so you read it in your head, but you find the balloons are so big, there's so many words in them, you find you have to read it really fast for it to be funny. So I really like the words that Burnham is giving him. There's a lot of fun stuff with local politics regarding the occult stuff that's going on right now, the raining blood and all of that, and this continues to be to really feel like a big event and feel like it's got teeth, and that it's a big looming mystery and a big threat. And it's also fun to see kind of all of the Ghostbusters back together again. There's a scene toward the end where everybody that's a Ghostbusters right now is all kind of gathered around in Ghostbuster suits, and we see just how many of them there are. It'll be interesting to see if Louis Tully ever actually gets to be a Ghostbuster now that Eric Burnham is allowed to use him. When I interviewed Eric a couple of years ago, when this book was just in its I think second arc or so, he told me that the two characters he wasn't allowed to write in this book, and he could barely refer to them, were Louis Tully and Dana Barrett. And for some reason, that embargo has been lifted, and he's allowed to use both of those characters now. And so he brought them both in the same arc, and he found I think pretty organic reason to have to do so. And so anyway, really fun stuff. And if you haven't been reading Ghostbusters and you're sort of kind of interested, I think Mass Hysteria is a great place to start. So go back to issue 13 and take a look. It's really, really good. Last thing this week is from Boom Studios. This is issue 3 of Loki, Ragnorok, and Roll, and this book is finally really kind of getting to the crux of it, where Loki has shown his true colors to his new friends on Earth, who have made him a rock god, and they're learning that he's actually a real god, and that he's just out for himself and his glory, and that he's been manipulating everything, and it looks like Loki is gonna kind of lose his friends and all of his worshippers because of these horrible things he's been doing, and maybe we'll find that Loki actually was starting kind of like living as a human, and actually found that through his machinations and his mischievous manipulations, that he actually was developing an appreciation for human beings and was starting to care about people, and so building some humanity here. I'm still really impressed by how well-rounded and three-dimensional this character is, and how different he is from the Marvel Loki. If you like Thor and Loki, I think you'd like this book, even though it's a different Thor and Loki, and even though it's a way wilder and sillier kind of universe with, again, this kind of imagination world of every god anybody has ever imagined becoming this real-life personified thing. This issue, though, is really bloody, and we had some kind of gratuitous violence in the first two issues, and it is that sort of book, and it was a little bit gory in the first issue, so I knew that this was definitely an adult kind of thing, but this one is really brutal, like, a little bit too much even for me, and I don't know if it's just the color scheme or what it is, but, like, I found it a little bit too much just for my taste. There's just certain panels where I'm like, I don't even want to look at that, just no. But I'm still really liking the storytelling in this book, and I really like Loki and Hercules' confrontation, and what Hercules has to say about the problems with the Asgardians and with Loki and Thor in particular, and kind of comparing and contrasting the three of them. But anyway, it's a really good book. It's just a little bit too brutal and gory for my taste. And now let's go on to Book of the Week. I think my favorite book of this week was What If number 5. And What If Age of Ultron #5, and I'm really surprised I'm saying that, but it blindsided me with the way that it wraps all of the other issues together, and became a real, honest-to-God, great what-if story, and reminded me what I loved about that series in the first place. And then my favorite cover this week is undoubtedly Batman 66 #10, because we got to see a Bat snowmobile, and that's fantastic. And now, let's go over to Superhero Enthusiast and find out about some books that I didn't read this week.
Hello, Geekvolutionaries, I am Alex, Superhero Enthusiast, once again here with BCLDR, books Captain Logan didn't read. And I only have 4 books this week, 2 from DC, 2 from Marvel, so I won't waste too much of your time, and I'll just get right into them. First one is the digital first book, Batman Beyond 2.0, number 19. This continues in with the big event that they're doing in the Beyond books, like I mentioned before, focusing on Terry in the Justice Lord's universe, our Terry in the Justice Lord's universe. And he's met up with that version of Terry who I've talked about in previous reviews of this book. And Terry wants to, our Terry, wants to find Bruce Wayne in that world, and it turns out he was killed. And the reason that the Justice Lords built a gigantic statue to him, which we saw at the end of the previous issue, was to scare people. And it kind of, in a way, it makes sense, because like that was what the costume that Batman developed was for, was to scare people. But here it's just kind of, it's not to memorialize him, it's to say like, yeah, this guy, we totally destroyed him. The other thing they did was completely just level Wayne Manor, and that's where Terry wants to go. And so they go on a little bit of a road trip there, and Justice Lord's universe, Terry tells him, as much, it's not there anymore, and they get up there and it's gone. There's really nothing there. And apparently all the gangs and stuff have kind of picked it over. There's like Joker spray paint all over the place. And so once they get up there, the Jokers do actually show up, since this alternate universe version of Terry is a Joker and owes them money. And they've tracked him down, and our Terry says, I thought maybe in this universe the Jokers would be better, but no, they stink here too. And so there's a big fight where the 2 Terrys team up and beat up the Jokers. And our Terry is able to break into what's left of the Batcave and find something that he can use, and that's a costume. And so I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to show what the Justice Lord's version of the Batman Beyond suit looks like, since it's on the cover, but here it is. I think it looks pretty cool. It's even more terrifying than the regular Batman costume. And that's pretty much all that happens in this issue. It moved kind of quickly. I guess at the beginning we saw a little bit of this universe's version of Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon, who are actually a couple, which is kind of interesting because they're so not in the mainline Batman Beyond book, and there is a little bit of bad blood between them. And so it's sort of funny how, in a way, the dystopian world is sort of more utopian for certain characters. I guess it just kind of depends. But that was a neat little thing to see. Overall, I'm really liking this. I'm really liking this event, and I'm really curious to see where this goes and how the 2 books, the Batman Beyond one and the Justice League Beyond one, kind of come back together again. But Batman Beyond 2.0, number 19, highly recommend it. The other DC book that I picked up was the Batwoman Annual, and this is a book that I dropped a long time ago, but I just kind of want to check this one out and sort of see what's been going on, because this book was really, really good before the New 52 when Greg Rucka was writing it, and then J.H. Williams III was doing the art, and then he became one of the main writers for the book in the New 52. And it wasn't great, and then it just got progressively worse and worse, and then it got even more worse, and then it just got like unreadable. And then they were trying to do things with Kate Kane and Maggie Sawyer and marry those 2 characters off, since that's what this whole thing had been building to. And Kate Kane had been maturing a lot as a person, and I think it would have been very symbolic of showing how she had changed. But DC is apparently totally against marriages right now for some reason, and so they put the kibosh on that. So then, the story, which was already terrible, could not pay off the thing that it was trying to pay off, so I just said, screw it, I'm not reading this anymore. Which is really unfortunate because, Kate Kane is an LGBT woman, she's a minority in that sense, and it feels like whenever we get really good minority books, those characters don't tend to have much life beyond the original creative team, and so we get these great steps forward in terms of diversity in comics and showcasing heroes of different types, and then it's just we get the step backward afterwards, and it's really, really unfortunate. But I checked this issue out, and I was kind of, sort of, able to follow along with what was happening. I knew that they were building towards the DEO, the Department of Extranormal Operations, I think it is, who Batwoman was sort of forced to work for. They wanted to take down Batman, and so they were using her as a weapon to do so. And much of this issue is just them kind of fighting. And it's kind of a hilarious fight, because she picks up a giant 2x4 and beats Batman in the face with it. But yeah, it's not really much happens aside from that. We found out earlier, I guess, that her sister Alice, who was in the first, the Greg Rucka run on Batwoman, was still alive. She didn't end up dying at the end of that like we thought. I'm not really totally sure how that was playing into it. Firebird is in this as well. Obviously, it kind of goes through the typical thing where Batwoman and Batman fight, and then they team up to fight the DEO at the end. And at the end of this, it does say the end, and I don't know if they just mean of this issue, or of this arc, or of this story, or if the book was cancelled. I really don't know. I wouldn't be surprised because it was so bad. The art in this is very inconsistent as well, not just in terms of the fact that there are two different artists working on it, one of whom, Trevor McCarthy, who I normally like, his stuff in this was really bad, and the other artist who I'm not familiar with, I quite liked their stuff. This book did have rotating artists, sort of. J.H. Williams III did the first arc, like he had done because he was writing. He didn't have time to do all of the art, so they had a few other people in there. Amanda Connor was on it for a while, and her stuff was actually terrible. And I mean, it's Amanda Connor, she's amazing, but she could not draw Batwoman's cowl to save her life. It just looked terrible and wonky all the time. And apparently she had creative differences with, I guess, the writers, and so she was only on the book for a few issues, and I guess they brought in Trevor McCarthy, and he's been there more or less since, from what I've been able to tell. But yeah, I don't know, I really liked the one artist in this, and I don't know who it is off the top of my head. I wasn't familiar with them, but their stuff was really, really good, and I kind of, part of me hopes the book just goes on, because I love the way that they draw Batwoman. But I would like to see that artist get more work, regardless. But yeah, this wasn't really great. It was still kind of terribly written, and I don't know, I lost interest in the story a long time ago, which is really unfortunate because I do like the character of Kate Kane. But Batwoman Annual, wouldn't really recommend it, but I guess now you're sort of up to speed. Heading on over to Marvel, I'm going to go with Hulk #2 first. This was really interesting just because of where the book left off in issue #1. There was a whole thing where Bruce Banner got shot in the back of the head, and there were nefarious people responsible for it, and they were trying to steal his Hulk, I guess, biochemicals and stuff. They were taking all sorts of blood samples and stuff from him, and it turns out in this they use those to reconstitute the Abomination. I wasn't aware that the Abomination had been dead, but somehow they were able to revive him with that, and it's really creepy because he's like this gigantic sludge at the beginning of this, and then they put the stuff in him and he becomes like a person again. But it was just really, really weird to see this weird sort of sludge with a face on it, and it's the Abomination's face. But at the end of this, Bruce Banner, or at the end of the previous issue, Bruce Banner had been basically reduced to having the mind of a child. He's a super genius who's now extremely, I guess, I don't say developmentally disabled, but he's just mentally like a child. And I was really curious to see how they would play that in this. It works kind of interesting in that they have him living with some reverend or something in some small town in the middle of nowhere, and he's just kind of doing janitorial work in the church, and they're trying not to get him angry and stuff because he can still, I guess, transform into the Hulk. And it's funny that despite being very childlike, he still sort of exhibits those Hulk qualities, which I guess maybe are childlike. They bring him lunch and he tries to like open up the Tupperware container and he can't get it at first. And they're like, "Here, let me help you." And he's like, "No, mine." Really, really frighteningly. And at the end of this, basically the Abomination shows up. They sent him to go fight the Hulk, or what's left of him. And Maria Hill has to try and get him to transform by being mean to the, I guess, mentally handicapped guy. So it plays off kind of weird, but I'm really curious about where this is going, since it's just sort of so bizarre. They totally threw me for a loop. I did not see this whole, Banner being made a, mental child again kind of a thing. So I find this really interesting. It's worth checking out. We're only, a couple issues in at this point, so you can kind of just try it out for yourself and not have to make too much of an investment. But Hulk number 2, I thought it was pretty interesting. My last book from Marvel was The Amazing Spider-Man number 1. And it wasn't really so amazing. I was really curious to see how things played out after Peter came back. And they kind of play out how you would expect, but in a far more boring kind of a way. And I've never thought Slott was particularly great when it came to the writing of Superior, which is where I kind of picked up the modern Spider-Man, just because I was curious in the concept. But yeah, I don't know, I'm not really digging this Peter stuff yet. And it seems like there's a lot of threads that they're trying to throw in here, like they want to explore, and it seems like it's way too much stuff to do. There are like 4 or 5 or 6 different backups to this book, plus the preview to Inhumans, or Inhuman, whatever it's called, which brings the book to like 80 pages. It's huge, a lot to read, and I won't go into everything because I would be here all day, but I'm going to focus on the main story. And I guess the big thing is there's going to be kind of, I guess, a confrontation between Anna Maria, who was Ock Spidey's girlfriend, and Peter. And because I won't spoil too much, but she becomes aware of something in this. And I know this issue plays out really kind of silly in that there's some weird villains in this who I've never seen before. And they're just sort of bizarre, kind of roughly animal themed, and they call themselves the Menagerie. But anyway, Spider-Man has to fight them, and one of them like destroys his costume, and he has to make like a diaper out of webbing to cover up his junk. And there's a bit of Peter having to deal with the fact that the city kind of hates Spider-Man because of everything that Ock did. But it's not, I just sort of expected this to really jump into that, and we would be at a place where the city would kind of be totally distrustful of Spider-Man again, and we haven't seen that much of it yet. My theory that Jameson was going to go back to the Bugle seems to be wrong, in that they printed a huge story about how he as the mayor had to resign in disgrace. So I'm really curious what the "I'm going to do the kicking now" line was sort of in reference to, and if he's going to try something else. But yeah, I just really didn't care for this one, and I want to know what the after effects of Superior are, but I just really didn't enjoy this. I didn't care for the art in this as well. It was Humberto Ramos who did the first bit on, I guess, Superior, and I didn't really care for it then either. I do like the first couple pages of this, which are in this beautiful kind of painted style, and I think that works with his art style far more than the kind of modern inked and then digitally colored kind of comic thing. But then you like turn the page, or I guess in my case click the page, and we go from this beautiful kind of monochrome painted art style to this bizarrely digitally colored thing with like colors coming from all over the place, and the design of the panel is just, it's crammed full of stuff. It's just bad. I just didn't really care for it at all. So I'm probably not going to continue on with this book. I did ask for some great Spider-Man runs, and I got some great submissions. So people let me know some great runs in Spider-Man that I'm going to check out. I've been reading a little bit of stuff, or did in preparation for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was a lot of fun. I'm really digging classic Spidey right now, so I think that's where I'm going to be getting my wall crawler fix, is from reading some classic Spider-Man stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I do want to see what the effects are of Superior Spider-Man, but it'll probably be something I pick up in trade. That does it for me for this week, though. Just only had those 4 books. You can head on over to my channel if you're interested in seeing Batman Eternal Review with myself and Steve Baxi. And we even have a special guest this week, Captain Logan himself. So that discussion was a lot of fun. We learned some really interesting things, like orange is a color. And that will make sense when you see that. But that does it for me. I'm Alex, superhero enthusiast. And back to you, Captain Logan.
Well, thanks again, enthusiasts, for all your insights and your reviews, and thank you, fine folks, for watching. Once again, if you're ever in the Kansas City area, check out Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas, and if you ever want to send us anything to review on the Comic Vault, our P.O. Box is always open. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285, and I will be back with you again this week with more videos. Please be patient with me. I've got lots of other things going on this month. This is an incredibly busy time for me. I'm gearing up for a big convention at the end of the month, and I'm doing a lot of panels and things, so I'm having to do a lot of writing for that. I am going to do my level best to get a review of the first Amazing Spider-Man movie up for Rewind this week. I was hoping to do that last week, but I couldn't promise anything. I knew with everything I had going on, it might not be in the cards. I'm going to try to get that done this week, and then after that, I'm going to work like crazy to finally get Spawn Year done. So there may still not be Rewinds for a while until I finally get that project done, and I just want to thank everybody for your patience and for letting me get caught up on stuff, because like I said, really busy time of the year. I really wish that we'd managed to get that done before now, but it's gonna be all right. We'll get it all done. And anyway, thanks again as always for watching. I'm Captain Logan, wishing you happy reading.